Vile, indefensible, murderous, racist, criminal. Liam Neeson's possibly career-ending comments about his desire to wreak revenge on any black man he could find following the rape of a close friend are as bad as you can get. I'm not seeking to defend those remarks. However, they reflect something that didn't happen 40 years ago. Have none of us ever had some evil thoughts once in our lives that we did not act on? Or in our modern world, are we to be defined by our mistakes, however despicable, forever?
So a couple of things, Nick. So first of all, I don't know if you noticed, but this was quite a big week for stories about racism in Britain, because there was a report about the levels of harassment and bullying that black female professors are experiencing. There was a debate among some members of the Conservative Party about why they can't use the word Paki, because they think they should be allowed to. There was a deportation, a charter flight that was deporting black British people, one of whom at least actually had a British passport, was nearly deported anyway. Part of the whole Windrush thing that is still ongoing, that's seeing black British people targeted for deportation. And then there was this story about Liam Neeson. Now, I find it interesting that Liam Neeson confessing that he had these racist thoughts was the thing that everyone was interested in, rather than the very real ongoing experiences of people who are facing racism in this country. And I feel like I have some personal experience about this, because I wrote a book which came out this time last year, in which I talked about my experiences of racism and why I think it's healthy for us to have a conversation about it. And you know, what was so fascinating is that the same people who have jumped to defend Liam Neeson are the ones who told me that I was being a victim by talking about it. And now suddenly a Hollywood actor comes out and says he had these racist thoughts, and they say, oh, it's great that he talked about it and it's really healthy to have a conversation.
Can I just ask you before I go to the rest of the panel? I hear all of the above. I didn't know about the black professors. I didn't know about the P word, and apologies if anyone was offended. But is Mr. Neeson forever to be defined by that? That's my key point.
I think it would be a different conversation if he admitted and reflected on the reasons why he had those thoughts, which he hasn't done. He says he regrets being vengeful.
Right.
The question I have is, this female friend he described came and told him she'd been raped, which is, as I'm sure we'll all agree, a horrible thing to happen, both to her and to him.
Right.
And then the first thing he said to her was, what colour was he?
OK.
Why did he see it in such a racialised way? And secondly, when he then had this murderous thought about any black person, he hasn't reflected on what is it about our society that would make someone react in such a racialised way that, by the way, plays into a very established history of blaming all black people for the crimes of one. I just want to play everyone exactly what he said so we can see it for ourselves.
I was away and I came back, and she told me she had been raped, but she handled the situation of the rape in the most extraordinary way. But my immediate reaction was, I asked, did she know who it was? No. What colour were they? She said it was a black person. I went up and down areas with a cosh, hoping I'd be approached by somebody. I'm ashamed to say that. And I did it for maybe a week, hoping some black would come out of a pub and have a go at me about something, you know, so that I could kill him.
I'm not clear at all how his reflecting on this has led him to an understanding of why we think in such a racialised way. And for black people, when they hear that, it reminds us of a history where we were rounded up and punished for things that had nothing to do with us. I just want to play you one more thing quickly. This is Kelechi Okafor, who is a black woman who often comments on these issues, and I completely agree with what she has to say. Have a listen.
Historically speaking, there's been so much violence and rape towards black women where black men had to stand by and watch due to colonisation, due to the transatlantic slave trade, yet we don't find that black men are going out looking for random white men who had nothing to do with it to kill, even though entire family lines were started from rape. So it's really, really problematic that Liam would think that any black man could pay for the crimes of a single black man, because we're not expecting that of any other race.
I feel like I can say from personal experience that when, as a black person, you raise this, you're told you have a chip on your shoulder. If you don't like it here, leave. When someone like Liam Neeson says he had a racist thought, this huge wave and outpouring of sympathy.
OK, thank you. Let's get Rachel involved. And I take on board all those points. What I'm trying to explore is this ever hanging over his head?
I think it's unfortunate for Liam Neeson that he was doing an interview to to promote a film about revenge. And, you know, one of the good things about this may be that we don't have to endure endless actors being interviewed about their films anymore, because this has been a complete catastrophe for that movie. They've cancelled the premiere. On the other hand, you know, it was 40 years ago. You can hear the shame in his voice, and he says he is ashamed. Now, are we going to take a man down for what was essentially a thought crime?
Are we?
I don't think we should.
No,
I don't think it should be a one strike and you're out.
But do you think they will? Do you think people will?
We don't necessarily know. It's been interesting that 2 black people have come out thoughtfully to defend Liam Neeson, and they are Whoopi Goldberg and they are John Barnes, who I know well. And he is not a man who shoots from the hip, John Barnes.
Do you agree with what he said?
Do I agree with what John Barnes said?
Look, I did.
I don't think this is a black and white ha-ha issue at all.
Let's hear what John, for those who didn't, and I'll come straight back to you, Rachel, and I feel I'm going to bring you. This is what John Barnes said.
He said he was horrified and ashamed for thinking that, but that is not the story we're telling. We now want him to be pilloried. We want to never let him work again. People are now going to be afraid to tell the truth on how they feel. And I always say, we are all unconscious racists. And he said unconsciously for a week and a half, that's how he felt. We have people who've been doing it and keeping it quiet for 20 years, but as long as you don't admit it, then we think everything is okay. He's ashamed and embarrassed by it. So why is he being pilloried for it?
Former England football player there, John Barnes. Rachel, quick response to that?
Just very quickly, I was once held up at gunpoint by 2 black men. And when I go out into the street, I don't think, should I be careful of black men? I think, should I be careful of men? Now, does that make me guilty of sexism? You know, that I admit that when I'm in the street and I tell my daughter, be careful of men. I mean, it's the same sort of thing.
Let's get Phil in.
It's like we have got a collective unconscious, and that was now in my unconscious.
Phil, I want to get you in on this.
I think that Neeson here has basically said something that's incredibly stupid, all right?
Yeah.
He's going to regret it. I don't think he should be shot down for the rest of his life about it, because people make mistakes and everybody deserves the chance to be rehabilitated in some way, shape or form. But when he opened his gob, it's almost as if he opened it and was in role of what he was in the film. Listen, you are not a steely-eyed bringer of death. You're an actor, you're a lovey. So those thoughts that you say you were having are probably only thoughts. So for that reason, and that reason only, what he was actually saying is probably just to promote his film and nothing else.
But I'm not sure that what he said was incredibly stupid. I think that what he said was incredibly honest. Now, it was incredibly honest and it was very wrong. And he himself has admitted that it was wrong. He himself has said that he's moved past it. And I don't think there's anyone in the land that would advocate what he was suggesting.
No,
so if we all put that to one side and we all acknowledge it was a wrong thought that he had, he shouldn't have had it, and hopefully, you know, he doesn't have those thoughts anymore. So if you just park that to one side...
Phil, what he said was, I'm prowling about looking for someone to kill. No, you weren't, because if you'd have wanted to...
I'm prowling about looking for a black man to kill.
Yeah, OK, prowling about looking for a black man to kill. If you had wanted to kill a black man, you would have done. You're all mouth, you're promoting your film, shut your mouth, Lisa, you're a
because
fool.
I didn't
make...
Hold on, because I didn't make my point. So my point is, if we all conclude that there's kind of things you shouldn't say, then we put that to the side because it was wrong, everyone agrees. My point is, we have this culture of social justice warriors who sit in the wings and they are absolutely determined. They go through years of people's previous things, and I'm moving on from the Liam Neeson thing here, I'm not talking about him anymore, I've moved on to talk about the general issue of this. They go through years worth of people's back catalogues of stuff, desperately hoping to bring people down that they're jealous of or that for some reason they have agenda against, and they throw up stuff from decades ago. You saw it in the Oscars not that long ago. People having to resign from roles because of stuff they said when they was 15 years old.
Yeah, we have seen too many times people who've actually done good work, Liam Neeson's done great work, being taken down and being cancelled, in the phrase that is used now, by people who sit in judgment and say, right, you're over. But there's been a Sky data poll done on whether Liam Neeson was right or wrong, and let's have a quick look at that. 44% say he was right to make his admission, and 30% said he was wrong. I just think he was absolutely idiotic to admit to this
if you keep shutting down honesty, you're going to create a culture of people that just don't tell the truth.
I don't agree with what you're all saying. I don't think he has apologised for, fully acknowledged what he did. He said he was wrong to be vengeful. He hasn't said, I had racist thoughts, I've thought about where they come from, now I have a better understanding of the way racism works on us psychologically. You know, Michelle, you're talking about the kind of social justice warriors who go and police people. we never talk about why it is that people have these thoughts. I know where they come from. If a black person commits a crime, it's black on black crime. If a Muslim is a paedophile, it's Muslim paedophiles. We have a society that racialises crime and racialises whole groups for the actions of one. He is manifesting that, and instead of talking about that, we're just so busy explaining.
Do you think he's not being punished enough? He is the victim of this crime, isn't he?
I'm not interested in punishing him. I'm interested in learning from what he did. He hasn't learned from it. We're not learning.
I don't know,
and when black
Afua.
people talk about their own experiences, personal experiences, that kind of racism, we are not listened to. People don't have the intellectual curiosity or the humility to realise that we have an experience.
The fascinating thing is, Rachel, we just don't know where it happened. We know everything. If it was in Ballymena 40 years ago, he's probably never going to find a black man.
Everybody has.
Los Angeles.
Listen, I'm afraid we have to move on from steely-eyed bringers of death to Carmageddon.